For some, smoking is a cultural thing, or something you do with your buddies to pass the time. But for these Hollywood stars, smoking was a way of life, an identity, an addiction. In this video, we have compiled some of Hollywood's worst smokers. Some of their stories would leave you in tears, others will leave you in awe. All we ask is for you to hit the subscribe button, then brace yourself. Bette Davis. Davis was not just a smoker, she was a signature smoker. Every single day, Davis was sure to burn through at least 4 packs of cigarettes without batting an eye. While this is such an incredible feat, Davis was not fazed by it. It was normal to her, a natural thing, and for the most part of her life, she grew so dependent on smoking that she couldn't do without it. But no one could tell the story of her addiction to smoking like those around her. Davis' friend and co-star, Henry Fonda, was one of the first to publicly comment on how much she smoked. His statement gave such a clear picture. He said, "I have been friends with Bette Davis for 38 years and I have the cigarette burns to prove it." Now, as funny as this is, it was no exaggeration. Davis smoked so much that cigarettes became less of an accessory and more like a signature for her. As a matter of fact, most of her fans might not recognize her without a cigarette in her hand, and she was well aware of this. In an interview, Bette Davis said, "If I did not smoke a cigarette, they wouldn't know who I was." No doubt, there must have been a few people who were concerned with her smoking and criticized her for it, but Davis didn't care much. She did whatever she wanted, smoked whenever and wherever she wanted, without a care in the world. But then on October 6, 1989, her smoking habits caught up with her as she passed on from breast cancer, never to smoke another pack ever again. Yle Briner. In January 1985, on Good Morning America, actor and obsessive smoker Yle Briner came on national television to encourage everyone watching never to smoke. Now, coming from anyone else, no eyebrows may have been raised, but Yle had smoked up to 4 packs a day for over 30 years. Why would he suddenly be against smoking? Well, Yle Briner was one of the most successful actors of his time, with multiple awards to celebrate his hard work and talent, including a Tony and an Oscar. But there was one small problem. Yle was obsessed with smoking. He would smoke when he ate, smoke when he drank, smoke in the bathroom, and smoke on his way to set. He could not get away from a cigarette. But in June 1983, Briner got a diagnosis that would change his life forever. He had lung cancer and he didn't have much time left to live. In that moment, instant regret filled this great actor, and he turned away from smoking. Soon, he pleaded to pass a message on national TV so everyone can hear what he had to say. Eventually, Good Morning America news show gave him an opportunity, and amongst other things, Yle said,
"Now that I'm gone, I tell you, don't smoke. Whatever you do, just don't smoke."
His public announcement became the biggest anti-smoking statement ever made, and sadly, on October 10, 1985, 3 months after, he passed on. Before we move on to the next actor, please remember to subscribe. It gets even more intense. John Cazale. He liked to drink, he liked beautiful women, he liked to act, and he loved to smoke. These were the words of John's friend and colleague, Richard Shepard. Between 1972 and 1978, Cazale was a household name in Hollywood, but when he became too obsessed with smoking, his body began to fall apart. He would burn cigarette sticks and pack after pack almost every hour. He was eventually diagnosed for lung cancer, and everyone knew he didn't have much time. As a matter of fact, while filming Deer Hunter, the cancer got so bad that his body was slowly dying. The producers knew he might give in at any moment, so they shot his scenes first. And just like they suspected, a few weeks after, on the 13th of March 1978, Cazale passed on. Are you enjoying these stories so far? Well, go ahead to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. There's more stories in store for you. Amanda Blake. Was Blake a victim of circumstance or a victim of her own ignorance? You decide after hearing her story. Not only did she smoke heavily, she did so without a care in the world and no sense of consequence. Others saw it and felt she was simply living life on her own terms and doing what she wanted, when she wanted. An interesting theory, but the truth was much more shocking. It all started when Blake was diagnosed for a rather surprising variant of cancer, mouth cancer. Not only was she shocked by the diagnosis, she was also confused. She had never heard of mouth cancer before, and when told it was a result of her smoking, she became angry. She said, "I am a victim of oral cancer. I never would have smoked my first cigarette if the warnings had been sterner." And just like that, the realization dawned on her. She had underrated the effects of smoking, and she blamed cigarette companies for not making their warnings clearer. Was she right in doing this? Let us know in the comment section. Clark Gable. Clark's life was not exactly a bed of roses, but somehow his path became clearer when he developed an interest in acting. It all started when one day he went to see a play called The Bird of Paradise, and the way the actors embodied the characters and told such a captivating story, Clark was hooked. At that point, all he wanted to do was become an actor, but sadly, that was the beginning of his end. Mentored and assisted by the theater manager, Josephine Dillion, Clark made it into Hollywood, and then soon after, picked up smoking initially as a hobby, but as the years went by, it became an addiction. Clark would smoke 4 packs a day and 2 tobacco sticks on the same day. It was like breathing air to him. He just had to do it. Soon enough, his health began to decline. His lungs were so damaged that he rattled when he spoke. On top of all that, he began to get heart attacks, each one worse than the last. His loved ones became concerned for him. After surviving 3 terrible heart attacks, he was at the hospital one day in November 16, 1960, when he had the 4th heart attack. This one was different, more deadly, and sadly, it took his life. But despite all of these, this next story is the saddest of them all. Humphrey Bogart. All you had to do was see one film he appeared in, and you'd have no doubt that Bogart was born to be a star. However, along the line, he was already famous for being such a staunch alcoholic, but he also threw smoking into the mix. He smoked at least 2 packs of cigarettes every day, and he was religious with it. When he was stressed, he increased his smoking to 5 packs per day and drank along with it. By early 1950, Bogart's immune system and body was damaged severely. He was always breathless, coughed often, and even had to do surgery. But after 2 surgeries, he could not speak or walk up straight. He was always weak and tired. It got so bad that he needed an oxygen mask to breathe, and even then, he was still smoking, only with crystallized cigarettes. He passed on January 14, 1957 at the age of 57. John Wayne. When it comes to Hollywood, Wayne was the epitome of success. For over 40 years, he was the highest paid actor, appearing in 172 films while starring in over half of them. But soon, not only did he become a chain smoker, he was overweight, out of shape, and his health began to decline. Since high school, Wayne had been a smoker, and even while in Hollywood, he'll smoke as much as 6 to 7 packs a day. Not only was he a smoker, he was also a pioneer for smoking. He would appear in multiple ads and magazines to promote cigarettes, especially My Camel cigarettes. But sadly, his vice got the best of him and sent him to the great beyond sooner than he'd have liked. Rod Sirling. Aside from being a self-taught dramatist, winning 6 Emmy Awards, host of The Twilight Zone and Night Gallery series, he was also a World War III veteran, and he had the scars and wounds to prove it. As a result of his bad knee from being injured in battle, he smoked heavily to relieve the pain. But despite his intelligence and many talents, Sirling could not pry himself away from cigarettes, hard as he tried. He would smoke 2 to 3 packs of cigarettes a day, and when he was 50, he had to go in for heart surgery, complications from his smoking. However, the surgery didn't go well, and he lost his life tragically. Vivian Lee. Since she was a teenager, Lee had been smoking, and it only got worse the older she became. As she made a break into Hollywood, Lee was reported to have smoked 4 to 5 packs of cigarettes per day, especially during filming. It helped her ease her stress on set as she worked long hours, so everyone looked away. But slowly, her smoking was draining her of life. In 1944, she was diagnosed with tuberculosis. Tragic news. But despite this, she still kept smoking. By May 1967, her ailment had gotten so bad that it had caused a hole in her lung, and by the age of 53, her body could no longer withstand the damage, so the talented actress passed. Lucille Ball. You might know her from her incredibly successful American sitcom, I Love Lucy. Although the show was about the marriage between Lucille and her husband Daisy, the main point of attraction here was its sponsor. A lot of shows in that time has sponsors, and so there were commercial breaks in between. However, I Love Lucy had a particularly interesting sponsor, Philip Morris Cigarettes. So not only did Lucille smoke cigarettes often, she also featured in ads alongside her husband. As a brand ambassador, she smoked several packs a day and was very unapologetic about it. She stayed obsessed with smoking, even when her health began to decline. Which of these actors would you vote for as the worst smoker?